What's going on, guys? Crypto Renegade again here with another video for you. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about why no altcoin is ever going to overtake Bitcoin. But before we jump into the content, just want to say it one more time. I have a brand new ebook, 7 Best Ways to Secure Your Crypto. It's 100% free, put a lot of work into it. So go ahead and check that out down below in the comments where I pinned it. All right, let's get started. Alright guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I wanted to give my perspective on why I think no altcoin will ever overtake Bitcoin. And there's a few key points that I want to touch on. Now, I'm not going to go into super depth with a lot of these things. I just want to touch on a few key points that kind of drove me to this hypothesis and what I've been observing in the crypto space over the last 4 years with different narratives, different objections, and kind of what we're seeing in the macro and political climate. So what I wanted to really touch on are a couple of key points. The first reason that I think that Bitcoin has an edge on top of any other altcoin, other than being the very first iteration of cryptocurrency and being the first one there, it was meticulously planned out. And it was also very, very important, whoever Satoshi was, to make this economically viable for the long term. The way that they've set it up is he put a hard cap supply that's mathematically determined, so it only issues 21 million total Bitcoins over the entire lifespan of Bitcoin, which will mathematically and strategically release coins that are cut in half every 4 years all the way to the year 2140.
How does a self-sustaining economy work?
I don't understand how the U.S. economy works, much less some sort of a self-sustaining one. I don't understand how finances work.
And the way that this is done is in a deflationary supply and a deflationary manner, which ultimately I think is as the supply and issuance decreases over time, there's going to be a significant more demand because you literally cannot get any more. There's a scarcity complex and a scarcity effect that goes into this, which economically is really attractive right now, especially with all the trillions of dollars that not only our government, but lots of other governments are printing to help stay afloat. And over time, that's going to rip the current dollar into an inflationary nightmare. So as you can see, Bitcoin itself is looking very attractive, not only for huge corporations, but for the everyday person that wants to make sure that they're investing in assets that are going to appreciate over time and something that maintains its value as the dollar is devalued over time. So that's the main or primary point that I wanted to touch on. The next one that I wanted to touch on that differentiates this from every other altcoin is proof of work versus proof of stake. So as you've seen, there are a lot of new coins and a lot of new projects have been rolling out or even converting to proof of stake, like Ethereum 2.0, which is planning to do that very soon and gradually shift its algorithm from proof of work to proof of stake over the next few years. Now, obviously, there's a lot of pros and cons from proof of work to proof of stake, but with proof of work, which is Bitcoin, and what the algorithm that it uses is it requires real world resources to produce it. So it requires computers, it requires electricity, it requires real world assets and energy to produce newly minted Bitcoins and also to secure the network. So it has a real world tangible economic incentive and cost associated with minting and producing new Bitcoins. So if you compare that to proof of stake, where essentially, depending on the project, if they do a pre-mine or if they have an ICO or they have an issuance to the team, they can essentially distribute the entire reserve of these coins and give it out to whoever they want or as they see fit, or even via airdrop. And basically what this incentivizes is people who have the most amount of coins has the most control or power over the network. So it's essentially the richest person gets to make a lot of the decisions on how the network operates, or the person that holds the most coins. Now, in my opinion, that's not very equitable, and it's essentially rewarding the richest person in the room with control over how the network operates, different upgrades, different ways of securing it. So in my opinion, I just don't think proof of stake is a real sustainable model. There are a lot of economic benefits. There are also a lot of geopolitical and green energy and other things that really have a benefit. You're not reducing carbon emissions or things of that nature when you're dealing with proof of stake, but I think that in order to produce something of value, it needs to take real world resources, which is why I think proof of work in general is a better economic model, and it's a lot more sustainable, much like a real mining of gold with pickaxes in the ground is with gold. So just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a comparison there of the different models. Now, I'm not saying anyone is better or worse than the other, but in my opinion, I think there's a lot more sustainability with proof of work that algorithmically adjusts based on the amount of work and resources that are thrown at it. The third thing that I want to touch on, and then we will get to the fourth and final thing, which is, in my opinion, the most important. And the third thing that we're going to touch on here is you're seeing now a lot of large corporations and businesses now adopting Bitcoin as part of their portfolio. So you'll see companies like Tesla with Elon Musk, who bought over $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin and putting it on his balance sheet as he sees the economic wave of inflation coming to the world and seeing the governments irresponsibly print all this money. People are now looking at Bitcoin as a hedge or as a safety net to protect their dollars from being printed into oblivion. So you have Elon Musk with Tesla, you have Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy, who now has over 90,000 Bitcoins he's purchased over the past year. And you're seeing a lot of large corporations and large companies are now parting to allocate Bitcoin as part of their portfolio. In fact, you're even getting people coming around who said that Bitcoin is worthless garbage that doesn't prove anything, such as Shark Tank members. Kevin O'Leary is now allocating 3% of his portfolio, and even Mark Cuban, who used to say that bananas are more valuable than Bitcoin, he's coming around and going into different ecosystems with Ethereum and DeFi and such. But you're seeing a lot of people that said it was worthless and said they would never use it are now starting to come around and starting to see the real world value of a fixed supply asset like Bitcoin. And these aren't any small companies or corporations. These are very large and some of the world's largest corporations that are putting at least 1 to 5% of their entire portfolio of their balance sheet into Bitcoin because they believe that it is stable and that it will generate returns, or at very least it will help maintain the value of their holdings. Now, the final thing that I want to touch on here is really, really important. And I think that this is the key point that not a lot of people realize when they look at Bitcoin versus any other altcoin. And the main thing here is that Bitcoin specifically has no face behind it. So elaborating on that a little bit more, you have, for example, Ethereum, which has the face of Vitalik Buterin behind it. You have Bitcoin Cash, which has the face of Roger Ver behind it. You have even Craig Wright, who once claimed to be Satoshi and still does, is now the face of BSV. So what you really have here is these different top altcoins that, again, don't get me wrong, a lot of them have valuable use cases, but they all have a figurehead behind it. And when you have a large figurehead behind it, hypothetically, if something happens to them, they die, they leave the project, or something happens, that could really crush essentially what is going to happen with that future project because they're all looking to one central figurehead to see where it goes. The beauty of Bitcoin is no one knows who started it. There's no face behind it. No one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. And I doubt that anyone ever will get definitive proof of who it is, which in my opinion is the way that it should be. So when you're dealing with something like Bitcoin, who has no founder, has no face behind it, has no one that's claiming ownership of it, it's the people's money, which means everyone has control of it, it's open source code, and there's no one that they're looking to give them answers or to give them certainty about Bitcoin. And one other fact I want to point out is I read the Bitcoin white paper again recently, and the word decentralized weirdly is not anywhere in that paper. However, I think decentralization is the most powerful aspect of Bitcoin and its Bitcoin network. So I just wanted to point that out, that even though that was never intended, or at least in writing from Satoshi Nakamoto in his original paper, decentralization is probably the largest or most valuable asset of the network, is because it cannot be crushed or it cannot be dictated by one central figurehead. For example, you have Vitalik Buterin, where Ethereum in general is a generally decentralized project, but a lot of people look to him for his input. A lot of people publicly look to him as far as the direction of the project. And if something were to happen to him, it could really derail things. Yes, the project could survive, it could go on, but a lot of people are looking to him for the answers as far as the future projections of where that project will go. And I just think that having no face behind the project, not only being the oldest project that has quote unquote died hundreds of times, it's always come back bigger and stronger. Now Bitcoin is the largest computer and strongest computer network in the entire world. So just wanted to point that out. I don't think any altcoin is ever going to overtake Bitcoin. You see all these flippening hypes going on Twitter and things like that, but my personal opinion, I don't think anything will ever overtake it. It has the most stability. It has the largest market cap. Things could come close. Things could even temporarily overtake it. But I think sustainably for the long term, I don't think anything is going to ever overtake Bitcoin. Give me your thoughts below. Let me know if you think there's any altcoins that you think potentially have the promise of overtaking Bitcoin in terms of power, popularity, market cap, or things like that. We'll go ahead and see you in this next video here where I talk about ETH 2.0 and hardware wallet staking. See you guys in that video. Crypto Renegade out.